Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics. First, the highlights. Nigeria Police Force identifies inadequate manpower as a major factor militating against effective security. Imo, Kwara, Gabon and Oyo State governments begin distribution of food palliatives to indigents. Plus, we head to Central Africa, where army officers who seized power in a coup in Gabon on Wednesday named General Brice Nguema as the state's transitional leader. And welcome to the program. I'm Millicent Nwaka. We begin with what's happening outside our shores. The politics in Gabon is yet another coup in Africa, just 5 weeks after Niger's President Mohamed Bazoum was taken hostage by the troops of his own presidential guard. Gabon's Ali Bongo also finds himself under house arrest. A sudden statement on national television in the early hours of Wednesday to declare Mr. Bongo the winner of last Sunday's election was followed within minutes by a second surprise broadcast, this time a clutch of soldiers announcing the seizure of power in the former French colony. We'll bring you more on that, the latest that's happening there. But staying with that story, chairperson of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, and Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu, he has expressed deep concern over the political situation in Gabon. Now, with the Gabonese coup coming a month after the military takeover in Niger, the president's media aide, Adjurin Galale, says that President Tinubu has pledged to work with leaders within Africa and around the world to advance the cause of democracy on the African continent.
The president, as a man who has made significant personal sacrifices in his own life in the cause of advancing and defending democracy, is of the unwavering belief that power belongs in the hands of Africa's great people and not in the barrel of a loaded gun. The President affirms that the rule of law and a faithful recourse to constitutional resolutions and instruments of electoral dispute resolution must not at any time be allowed to perish from our great continent. To this end, the President is working very closely and continuing to communicate with other heads of state in the African Union toward a comprehensive consensus on the next steps forward with respect to how the crisis in Gabon will play out, into how the continent will respond to the contagion of autocracy we are seeing spread across our continent.
Well, as coups continue to spread on the African continent, it appears some leaders are taking proactive steps by reshuffling defense portfolios. Just yesterday, it's reported that Cameroonian President Paul Biya made major changes to the country's Ministry of Defense, affecting the delegate to the presidency in charge of defense, the Air Force, staff, Navy, and the police. Also, shortly after the Gabon coup, we understand Rwanda's Defense Force, RDF, announced on X, the social media platform, that President Paul Kagame approved the retirement of 83 senior officers. Well, joining us to talk more about this is Dr. Dapo Thomas, International Affairs Lecturer at the Lagos State University. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Yeah, good morning, Millicent. Good afternoon, Millicent.
Great to have you. Gabon officers have declared a military coup. President Ali Bongo is detained. He's asking, that his friends and the world should make noise. How would you describe this rise of military coup in Africa?
Well, I believe that at the time that the African states were enjoying the frenzy of military retreat into their barracks, into their various barracks. And then they just took power. They failed to understand that there are other structures or dynamics which they ought to put in place. It's not just the military withdrawing into the barracks. What made them to retreat? And how do you stop them from coming back? So these are the structures, these are the things, these are the measures you must have put in place. It's not just it's not just taking control of the reins of office. This is exactly what is playing out now, because now they failed to even come up with any action plan that in case the military starts returning, what would they do? And that's why the ECOWAS initially wanted to use force to go and intervene in Niger. And then the occurrence, the recent events now has shown that force is not what should be, what we should apply now. And even if we are going to use force, it's not something that you have to do like a kind of ad hoc thing. No, there must be a structure.
Well, when you say force, would you be referring to military intervention in the case of Niger,
yes, military. I'm talking about.
Okay.
Yes, I'm talking about military intervention. So now this one is in Central Africa. The first one was in West Africa, and there is need for a kind of omnibus action plan. Whether if you want to use force, if you want to apply diplomacy, or what steps you must take before you can even say you want to introduce force, because war is a last resort. Whether you look at it from left, right, and center, it is something that should not come first. So in this case now, do you want to go and intervene again militarily? No. The thing is, yes, we know that some of these civilian administrations also have their own problems. One, why should you tinker with constitution of your country when it is expressly stated that you cannot do more than 2 terms? Why should you neglect the welfare of your people and then you keep on amassing wealth, forgetting that the people, that the military that are guiding you are also human beings who are also interested in some of these things, and then when you create a space for them to come into office, then they will come.
So essentially, these are some of the factors that you see. Some have said, maybe France is to blame. And this is when you look at the larger coups we've had in some of these francophone countries.
That we should blame who?
France.
No, you don't blame France. You blame the African states themselves. Now, look at, France has about 1,500 military in Niger. If they had wanted to intervene, well, they could have started it. But, they have not done anything. And they have their men on ground. So, there is a kind of freedom for the African states to rule in whatever way they want to rule. It is not France that is doing. France is doing its own business. It's doing business. But when you do not rule your people properly, when you do not, will France tell you not to take care of your people? No. And then I'm not too sure, because I know where you are coming from, possibly because you have seen that Ali Bongo is a bit handicapped. No. I know you have read recently of Mitch McConnell. That's a senator in the US. He has frozen 2 times now. So it's not about being handicapped. The problem is not even about economy, because I can see that Gabon is even very rich by UNDP indices. It's very rich. And then they have about $15,000 PPP. That's purchasing power parity. No, so it's not about that. It's not about being handicapped. It is about him tinkering with the constitution and then the family ruling from 1967 till date. No, it's not allowed. And then it is not every nation that you just pack inside African Union. You change your name from OAU to African Union, trying to model or pattern your own organization after EU. But are you doing what EU is doing?
But
and
Doctor,
then EU...
Doctor, I was just going to bring your attention, and this is to some of the changes constitutionally that Gabon actually made before this election. They were all there, opposition was there, the people were there, and then they allowed that. The one term for presidential election and the term of if it's Mr. Ali Bongo, he will keep being the president should he win. I mean, this was already what was sort of in place. But I'd like to take you to where the mixture is coming from, the condemnation and calls for stability from the international community. The EU expressed concern about the risk of what's happening in Gabon spreading throughout the region. How does this affect us here in Nigeria, West Africa? And also, do you think that this is a problem of the fact that there have not been democratic gains in the past in some of these countries?
Well, I see this as a contradiction. Contradiction in the sense that the EU is not even supposed to be condemning African leaders. I mean to be condemning coups. Why? They have not, and they cannot allow any tinkering of the constitution. Let me just give you one example. You know that there is a war going on in Ukraine now, and then there is supposed to be an election by next year. They are even they want to ensure that election is held. They don't want any pushover. They don't want anybody to shift the date. So they enforce all these constitutional issues strictly in their own territory. But when it comes to Africa, they allow people to do 4 terms, 6 terms, 7 terms. They allow people to rule for 40 years, 50 years. Is there anybody in Europe that is ruling for 40 years? Would they allow that kind of thing? They are even asking Ukraine during this war, they are asking Ukraine to also follow human rights, to obey human rights. And then they're also asking them to ensure that there is no corruption. And that's why you see Zelensky sacking some of the military officers who have been accused of corruption. So they ensure that their own doctrine, their own tenets and everything is adhered to. But in Africa, where is the monitoring group? What monitoring are they doing? And the AU itself, what monitoring is it doing to ensure that all these things are put in place? I mean, this is nonsense. It's a contradiction. That is why there is peace, general peace in EU. In Europe. But in Africa, they cannot. Because they allow them, they just look at them, and then they allow them to go with all this nonsense they are doing, all these things that they have.
Dr. Thomas, it's really lots to talk about considering how events are unfolding in these parts. But we'd like to thank you for joining your thoughts on this issue on the program. Dr. Tabu Thomas, lecturer at the Lagos State University. Thank you so much for joining us at this time.
You're welcome, listen.
Very passionate Dr. Thomas there. Well, let's take you back to the earlier report, and this is about the latest with that situation in Gabon.
Faisant suite à la réunion de ce jour.
It's been over 24 hours since military officers in Gabon overthrew President Ali Bongo in a coup, following the announcement of Bongo as president for a 3rd term.
30 août 2023.
On this day, August 30th, 2023, we, the Defense and Security Forces, meeting within the Committee for the Transition and Restoration of Institutions, on behalf of the Gabonese people and guarantor of the protection of institutions, have decided to defend peace by putting an end to the current regime. The general elections of August 26, 2023, as well as the truncated results, are cancelled. The borders are closed until further notice. All institutions of the Republic are dissolved.
Sont annulés. Les frontières sont fermées jusqu'à nouvel ordre.
People took to the streets in celebration in support of the seizure of power, with some holding the Gabonese flags as military vehicles drove by in the Gabonese city of Port Gentil.
President Bongo was placed under house arrest and later released a video on social media asking his friends to come to his aid.
Send a message to all the friends that we have all over the world to tell them to make noise to make noise, for the people here have arrested me.
In the interim, the military junta has named Army General Brice Oligui Nguema, who was once the bodyguard of Ali Bongo's late father, as chairman of the Committee for the Transition and Restoration of Institutions.
Faisant suite à la réunion de ce jour.
All the commanders-in-chief and chiefs of staff, as well as the generals in second section of the Gabonese Republic, were present for the meeting. General Brice Oligui Nguema was unanimously appointed chairman of the Committee for the Transition and Restoration of Institutions, president of the transition.
Président du Comité pour la Transition et la Restauration des Institutions.
Meanwhile, in a press statement released in reaction to the coup, the chairperson of the African Union Commission strongly condemned the military takeover and encourages all political, civil, and military actors in Gabon to give priority to peaceful political avenues and a rapid return to democratic constitutional order in the country. The United Nations has also condemned the coup and is calling for parties involved to engage in dialogue and uphold the rule of law.
The Secretary General is following closely the evolving situation in Gabon. He notes with deep concern the announcement of the election results amid reports of serious infringements of fundamental freedoms. He firmly condemns the ongoing coup attempt as a means to resolve the post-electoral crisis. The Secretary General calls on all actors involved to exercise restraint, engage in an inclusive and meaningful dialogue, and ensure that the rule of law and human rights are fully respected. He also calls on the National Army and security forces to guarantee the physical integrity of the President of the Republic and his family. The United Nations stands by the people of Gabon.
Ousted President Ali Bongo had ruled Gabon for 14 years, taking over from his late father, who ruled the country for 42 years.
Well, away from the situation in Gabon, inadequate manpower has been identified as a major factor working against government industrialization efforts, as insufficient police presence and response capabilities could expose industrial sites to criminal activities. This is the position of the Inspector General of Police Acting, Kayode Egbetukun, in a paper presentation to Senior Executive Course 45 at the National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies, Coup, Plateau State. Speaking on industrialization, energy security and climate change, the role of the Nigeria police force, the police chief observed that there is need to recruit more personnel for effective security.
Adequate security and law enforcement are crucial for fostering a conducive environment for industrialization and economic growth. Insufficient manpower in the police makes it difficult to deploy officers and men to many industrial layouts and communities, thereby leading to increased crime rates, including theft, cybercrimes, vandalism, and sabotage. Thus, as the Nigerian government is planning and strategizing to industrialize the country, there is a need for the government to continue to increase the manpower strength of the NPF, with a view to improving our presence in these areas. Though an annual recruitment effort is in place and has improved the number of personnel of the force significantly, this remains insufficient when compared to the 1 policeman to 400 citizens ratio recommended by the United Nations. As of now, the police-citizen ratio is 1 to 604. In view of the growing population, which the World Population Review 2023 puts at approximately 223,499,000. Therefore, the NPF requires additional 190,000 personnel to be at parity with the United Nations recommended ratio. Therefore, the inadequate manpower, which has resulted in a low police presence, will hinder the government's industrialization efforts. Without sufficient police presence and response capabilities, industrial sites could become vulnerable to criminal activities, hampering economic progress. In addition, inadequate manpower in the police has led to insufficient deployment of policemen to protect critical infrastructure, and has contributed to an increased risk of attacks on oil pipelines, theft of petroleum products, and illegal refining operations.
Meanwhile, in Kaduna, the state governor, Uba Sani, has expressed concern over the deep religious and ethnic divisions in the state, with a vow that equity and justice will reign supreme under his leadership in order to bring about positive development to every part of the state. The governor made the remarks at a one-day conference on Kaduna Direction on Peace Building, organized by the State Peace Commission in collaboration with the United Nations Development Programme, UNDP.
I am deeply worried by the ethnic and religious divisions in Kaduna State. I am the governor of a state where all government activities or action are viewed from lenses of religion and ethnicity. We are captives of our past, a past marked by incessant conflicts, relating hate and distrust. We must break loose from our unpleasant past. We must collectively free ourselves from the grip of conflicts merchants and agents of retrogression. We must change the narrative and bring development and progress into the discourse. The starting point is for all to recognize the fact that our state is diverse, with its complexities and possibilities. We must harness our diversity and turn it into an asset. If Rwanda, the experience ethnic cleansing that shook the world, can become an oasis of peace and ethnic harmony, we have no excuse to remain captives of our past. We can replicate the Rwandan example in Kaduna State. I'm conscious of the fact that leadership must play a key role in reshaping Kaduna State and making it a model of development, ethnic harmony, and cooperation. We have committed ourselves to running a pro-people, pro-poor, and an all-inclusive administration. Under my watch, equity and justice shall reign supreme in Kaduna State.
And to efforts aimed at reducing the impact of the removal of fuel subsidy on citizens, the Imo State government has flagged off the distribution of food palliatives procured by the federal government during the exercise in Owerri, the Imo State capital. Governor Hope Uzodimma says a committee has been set up, headed by the secretary to the government, to ensure that the palliatives get to the masses across the 27 local government areas.
Indigents of Imo State gather at the premises of the Ministry of Digital Economy and E-Government for the flag-off of the distribution of palliatives by the state government in spite of the downpour. Shortly after, they were joined by the state governor, Senator Hope Uzodimma, for the flagging off of the event. Governor Uzodimma explains that this distribution of 65,000 bags of rice is the first phase of the efforts by President Bola Tinubu's administration to cushion the effects of fuel subsidy removal on the vulnerable persons in society. He warns that anyone who tries to subvert the process will be arrested.
The whole idea is to ensure that these food items will get to the commonest man on the street. We have also included security agencies into this committee so that they will be in position to arrest any man or woman who wants to abuse the process. We are going to go to all the communities and every polling unit, mark my word, every polling unit will receive 10 bags of rice. And these 10 bags of rice, does not know any political party. It belongs to everybody registered in that polling unit. So you are advised to meet, to share your rice at your polling unit.
Also in attendance are labor leaders and other state collaborators.
There is no discrimination of party. He makes sure that every Imolite benefit from this succor. That is to say that he loves his people. He's not depending on any party to make sure that these rights are distributed.
We want to really thank His Excellency, our God-sent governor, distinguished Senator Hope Uzodimma, for what he has done to Imolites. In fact, I will put it this way: Imo, rejoice. Let Imo people rejoice in a time like this. But we have a governor that is, as far as I'm concerned, he has the interest of people at heart.
With the flag off of the distribution, the residents are hoping that the food items will serve the needful purpose across households. The bulk of the assignment now lies in the hands of the Palliative Distribution Committee, headed by the Secretary to the state government. The food items, warehoused in government facilities within the state capital, is expected to be distributed across the 27 local governments, irrespective of political affiliations or favoritism.
In the meantime, it was a similar ceremony in Kwara State as the government distributed rice palliatives to the most vulnerable persons in the state, with the committee saying it would share at least 250,000 10-kilogram bags in the first phase. Some of the beneficiaries also want the federal government to do more in alleviating the sufferings of the masses. Elsewhere, Oyo State Governor Imo announced the release of 1 billion naira, being the first tranche for the state government to augment the palliatives package received from the federal government. He also assured that the commencement of distribution for residents of the state will begin Monday, that's September the 4th, 2023. And here in the southwest, the Oyo State Governor, Seyi Makinde, kick-started the distribution of palliatives to poor households in the 33 local government area of the state. He says this in line with the measures put by his administration on the sustainable actions for economic recovery, safer to mitigate the hardship occasioned by the removal of fuel subsidy. And that's our program this afternoon. You've been served lunch. Many thanks for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Bye for now.